This election, I think, for a lot of people, was a surprise that shouldn't have been a surprise. I had allowed myself the 107-day delusion that it was possible for this incredible, Black and Asian woman to win. And then you were sort of snapped into reality on November 5th.
Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States, winning what had been expected, of course, to be a razor-tight and historic race.
When you are so afraid or indifferent, or I don't know what it is, I don't want to attribute motives, but whatever it is, cannot bring yourself to oppose dropping bombs on children in defense of apartheid.
Best-selling author, MacArthur Genius, and National Book Award winner, Ta-Nehisi Co.
In his new book, The Message, Coach reflects on questions of race, identity, colonialism, and the politics of writing.
Joy Reid, best-selling author behind books like The Man Who Sold America.
The priority among Trump's base really is an ethno-nationalist priority.
But there are people in Washington who are appointed who could have stopped this and just didn't want the smoke. To be white in this country, in the journalism, in the arts, in the literature, is to experience a kind of superhumanity. All of your feelings, all of your sensitivities, complete sympathy. But to be anything else is to get complete skepticism.
Hello, everyone. My name is DJ Johnson. I'm the owner of Baldwin Co. I want to say thank you, first and foremost, to my mother, who is sitting here in the audience right now. She's my heart, my soul. And thank you to you all for coming out and making this a historic event. This is technically the biggest author talk in the history of New Orleans. We have over 3,000 people here. So without further ado, I'll introduce our two esteemed guests of the evening. So please give it up for Joy Reid, the host of MSNBC, The Reid Out. And please, a warm, loud welcome for Ta-Nehisi Co, who is an award-winning author and journalist. His books include The Water Dancer, The Message. He is currently a contributing editor at Vanity Fair in the Sterling Brown Endorsement Chair in the English Department of Howard University. Please stand up on your feet for this historic moment in New Orleans when we are changing the landscape of literacy.
Well, first of all, I want to thank DJ. Give it up again for DJ and Baldwin and Company Books. One of my favorite bookstores in the entire world. It's one of the most beautiful places, the most beautiful experiences you will ever have. If you are a reader and you love books and you love good coffee, good conversation, and good people, please support Baldwin Company. I want to thank Xavier University, of course, as well. The president we met back there. And my friend Ta-Nehisi, how are you doing? So we have a lot to talk about, but you know that people are going to want to get your take on something really, really, really important that just happened not long ago. Beyonce getting 99 nominations. 99 nominations for the Grammy. No, really, the election. But you have a take on Beyonce, please give us that too.
No, I just think that there's something. Wow, what's up with Beyonce? I feel like the fact that she has not won album of the year. Like at a certain point, it's a statement on the Grammys and not her.
Yes.
You know, and I think like that has to. So I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
But like at a certain point, it's like when people are getting up and apologizing, when white folks are getting up and apologizing for the awards they've got.
Yes.
Like it's a statement about the award. It's no longer a statement about her.
Agreed.
You know, and I just want that to be kept in mind.
And the CMAs, when she did a country music album, shunning her, it's a statement.
Yeah, that's about them.
It's about them.
That's about them.
And so now let's move on to the election, because now that we've done the palate cleanser and talked about Queen Bee, this election, I think for a lot of people, was a surprise that shouldn't have been a surprise. I know it was for me. I think I had allowed myself the 107-day delusion that it was possible for this incredible, Black and Asian woman to win. And then you were sort of snapped into reality on November 5th. Were you as deluded as I was going in, and what is your reaction to the result?
I mean, I don't know if I was deluded. I thought she was going to win. I did think she was going to win. I don't know. I think I'm probably not the best person to ask. And I'll just talk about my perspective on this. And it comes from a couple places. Joy, we saw each other out at the DNC. So I personally, and I'm sorry, guys, this is going to probably upset a few of you. And I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings here. I'm really not. But look, I personally watched them march out and run on the legacy of Jesse Jackson's 2 presidential runs. Jesse Jackson in '88 was the last person that allowed an Arab American to address the DNC. There hasn't been one since then. It was the last time Palestinian rights were addressed. I watched them run on the legacy of Shirley Chisholm. It had been, 60 years since Fannie Lou Hamer had been excluded?
Yeah. I
watched them run on that. And then I stood outside and watched them exclude a group of people. And look, the numbers probably do not add up to, the notion that this is what cost her the vote. But I do think, you have to think about the soul of the party. And I think you have to think about, forget the party, I think you have to think about the soul of your movement. And I just wonder what it means when you are so afraid or indifferent, or I don't know what it is, I don't want to attribute motives, but whatever it is, that you, who could not have been this party's nominee in 1964, right, cannot bring yourself to oppose dropping bombs on children in defense of apartheid. Maybe I would have swung the election, maybe it wouldn't. I'm not saying it wouldn't. I'm not, you lost because of Gaza. I'm not saying that. But I don't think all manners of loss are the same. We can't control how, what happens. To some extent, this is not up to us. I think about my life like this, right? I think about, okay, how do I want to lose? Don't let me lose defending genocide. I just don't want to lose that way. You know what I mean? If the American people reject me because I said, I can't get behind this dude who is an enemy of democracy, an enemy of human rights, is taking American bombs and with American fighter jets and dropping them on hospitals and schools. I can't get behind it, and I lose on that. I mean, I can sleep at night. I wish I had won, but I can sleep at night. I'm also not in politics. So, I mean, maybe people's moral calculus is different, but there is a part of me, man, that obviously, I wish he'd won. I think a lot of people are going to get hurt because of the fact, I just want to be clear about that. I don't think it's better that she lost. I think a lot of vulnerable people are going to be really, really hurt. I wish the class of people who are the leaders of this party had more courage. And I think, and forgive me, I don't mean to extend this, but I think about 2 things, okay? I think about the fact that it was 20 years ago that Barack Obama really began his ascent, right? It's our first Black president. And people forget this. But a Barack Obama who supported the Iraq war would never have been president. Sure. this movement started there. Like, it actually started, like, you got a lot of people who, will run the numbers, this and that, try to predict things. But there was a moral core to what he was doing that got people excited. And how we ended up here, when we are effectively supporting the destruction of Gaza under the Orwellian language of self-defense, I don't know. And so, you say, well, Ta-Nehisi, you're not, really accounting for the very real, and hard work of politics. And I say, okay, but let's take a second. And let's think about this party since 1992. You lost affirmative action. You lost a woman's right to choose. Labor is under siege. You have lost the environment. Public schools are, effectively taken as, playgrounds for the private. You lost campaign finance reform. You lost the Supreme Court. You may lose Obamacare, which itself was a conservative compromise. What did this get? What did you win? Like, what did all of this strategizing and all of this, deep knowledge about, what did you ultimately win? And so when you start looking at it like that, and then you see the same people who have led you to this loss, Bill Clinton being deployed to Michigan, to do what? Liz Cheney, who has, she showed great courage, but has a constituency of 0, apparently. What are we doing here? So you don't have the tactics, you don't have the strategy, you don't have the morals. So what do we have then? It's dark. It's not like these people take immoral positions and then win. They don't. They don't. And so, when you look at the long stretch of this, Kamala losing almost underestimates the disaster. And it is a disaster, And I just think what I would hate is for this party to not do any sort of internal reckoning and just put out the next version of this. I can't hear in 2028, this is the most important election of our lifetime. Please don't tell me that again.
Yeah.
Please don't tell me that again.
The sad thing is this one probably was.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But how many of these can we take?
I know.
Apparently, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Last minute, you say. But
yeah.
I just think there really needs to be some deep-seated analysis about what this is about. Because they know what they're about. They're about hierarchy. And they're clear on it. They're very clear they're about hierarchy. They publicly say it. Puerto Rico is an island of trash. They tell you straight up and down. They tell you, I'm gonna deport all of y'all. And apparently some people like it, but some people will be deported like it apparently. But you know what I mean? It's I don't think we have that kind of clarity.
Yeah, and this does really bring me to the book because I feel like one of the challenges that we've always had in this country is that we're fighting against the stories we've been told and that we tell about the people in this country. So if you believe the stories that have been told about Black people, right, pre the 1619 Project, and you just believe that slavery somehow benefited Black people, that Black people should be grateful to be in America, which I've heard a lot from the right, then you can't abide Black Lives Matter. You can't abide Black liberation because you're saying, but I believe the story as I was told it. And you in this book challenge the story and ask people to step back and actually reimagine it. I think as did Nicole Hannah-Jones, honestly, a lot of this backlash, let's just be clear, is about her. Yeah. It's about her forcing us to retell the story of our relationship as Black people to America. Yeah. And you talk, and there's 2 places in this book where you talked about a notorious storyteller named D.W. Griffith. And I think it's really related to the election, honestly. When I found these 2 passages, I said, okay, I need to dog ear these. By the way, don't ever borrow a book from me. I destroy books. They are marked up. This isn't even my original book. I forgot my other book. My book is destroyed. I have it dog-eared. I have pages. I have notes in it. You can't even borrow books from me. But I found these 2 passages that I thought were really important. So here's the first passage. This is on page 108 when you guys go back and read the book. When D.W. Griffith wanted to shoot a large arrow right into the heart of American cinema, he knew exactly what story to tell, and he knew exactly how to do it. And it would not be art for art's sake. The Civil War hasn't been told accurately in history books, Griffith asserted, Only the winning side in the war ever gets to tell the story. This was an exaggeration, the kind of inversion that power uses to justify itself. The way the bully pretends to be the victim to add virtue to his violence. Ooh, that's from Trump. But the losers of the Civil War were not victims. In fact, Birth of a Nation shared its worldview with the President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson. Griffith used texts from Woodrow Wilson's 10-volume History of the American People throughout the film. In turn, Wilson screened the film at the White House. This was art as politics, and it was monstrously successful. It remade the business of cinema, the art of film in American history. Inspired by Birth of a Nation, the second Ku Klux Klan was born, taking their rituals, which haunt us to this day, directly from the film. And then in 1919, 4 years after the film's premiere, the Red Summer and the scourge of lynching swept the country. Life imitated art, and Black people were left fleeing and fighting for their lives. So
that's where they got the Burning Cross from. The Burning Cross comes from the film.
From the book. From
the book, and then you're exactly right. It was in the book first, and then in the film. It's not like he got that from the Klan. It's the other way around.
That's right.
He gave the Klan that.
Yeah.
Which people forget.
And so let me pause on that for a moment. I have a second passage I'm going to read that's also about D.W. Griffith, okay? But I want to stay on this for a moment because part of the war on the right is against removing that story about Black people, right? Is about their anger over the removal of that story and the replacement of that story with a Black liberation narrative, a narrative that we read in the 1619 Project, the sort of, pride in knowing that our history was more complex. They don't like it. No. And Trump is already promising he's going to banish that history again and put us back to where we were then. Talk about why that war seems to be so successful and why so many people of color, including some Black people, are willing to vote for it.
Yeah, I don't completely understand.
And not that many, but it's some.
Yeah, some. I don't completely understand that part. I'll be honest with you. I do think this, and this is like like some tough conversations we have to have, and I want to be very clear about this because I'm not insulting anybody. And honestly, Joy, before I even get to that, like I have to say, whenever we're talking about people of color or even like white people voting for Trump and bringing us to this present catastrophe, I just got to remind folks that there were some very powerful people that could have stopped this and decided not to.
Yeah.
Like it didn't have to come to this.
Stairs and Merrick Garland.
And why Biden appointed Merrick Garland, and like there were people who they just didn't want to fight. They didn't want to fight. They were scared, they got punked, and here we are. Yeah. And so like I know, on some level it is important to look at the demographics who voted for this. It never listen, these people have bills to pay. They got jobs to work. They do not have the luxury, people like us, of studying every little thing that somebody says and figuring out what is what. But there are people in Washington who are appointed who could have stopped this and just didn't want the smoke. And more than anything, I hold them responsible. More than any individual voter. People who just run around and talk about like the glory of America and this and that, but will not, I'm trying not to curse, will not fight. They will not fight. They're cowards. They're cowards. And so, when you start looking at who's responsible, I don't ever want us to forget that. There are individual people who could have and should have stopped this and wanted no part.
Yeah.
In terms of why, certain groups went a certain way, I mean, I don't know. I don't particularly understand it. I do think this. I think Black people are different. And I think we have to understand that we are different. And I don't mean that in like there's something in our bones is different. But we have been involved in politics in this country since 1619. We have been negotiating on slave plantations, negotiating under Jim Crow, negotiating under segregation, trying to, figure out the best, way, to save our lives. We are used to negotiating between lesser evils. We are very, very, accustomed to say, my master just did something that pissed me off and I want to run, but if I run, this will happen to my wife, so I cannot. Like, we're accustomed to that. We're accustomed to, having Abraham Lincoln, in 1864, bring a group of black folks to the White House and say, all of y'all should leave. And having to actually say the choice is either him or this guy, McClellan, who will enslave all of us again. And those are our choices. They're not great. They're not great. We're used to this. We're used to, the New Deal and, this guy, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, oh, I'm going to build this, middle class and, you know what I mean? But I'm going to keep you out of it. And having to support him because the other option is worse. So we have a politics that is not a politics of the American dream. We've never had a politics. We have captive voter politics. That's what we have. We have slave politics. I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I actually mean it in a wise way, in a pragmatic way. You know what I mean? Most people who come here don't have those politics. Why would you come here if you knew what America was? You wouldn't. You wouldn't. That's not your fault either. I'm not like saying, oh, you should know. Right. Most of us don't know about Israel. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not like, you know what I mean, we are somehow better than. It's just a matter of collective experience and collective wisdom. You don't have that. And so you come here and you think like an election is about the person that best represents my hopes and dreams. It'd be nice if it was. Yeah. Theoretically, it should be. But for the most part, that has not been true for black folks. And so I think, regrettably, there were, portions of this country that maybe for the first time, I don't know, but we're faced with, folks who would not acknowledge their very existence. And I think in the case of Palestinians, we're under the weight of genocide. Listen, man, you kill 1/6 of my family, because I heard a doctor tell me when I was out in Oak Cliff, I don't know what I'm gonna do. It's not. I cannot sit here and tell you I would have been wise in that moment, or I would have been calculating or pragmatic. I don't know. I don't know that I would have been. But having said that, I just think the promise of America and what it tells people who come here about what the presidency is this kind of titular head of democracy for the free world. We have never really had the luxury of thinking about it that way. And I don't know that that's true of most groups in this country.
Well, and I'm not sure that most people even know what democracy means. You're saying you're defending democracy. I think what a lot of people heard was you're defending the system. Yeah. And the system is broken for me. Yeah. So if you are, I don't care how much joy you're bringing or how many celebrities you're showing me or how fabulous and full your crowd, your stadium rallies are and how much that looks like an appealing vision for America, but you're just still defending the system. You're just a sort of a kinder, gentler version of defending the system. So there were a lot of people who were just anti-system voters. And I think that there's a sort of a tendency to think all those people are sworn defenders and lovers of Donald Trump. But a lot of them are literally just anti-system people. That's how you get somebody who can vote for AOC and Trump, or who voted for Obama twice and then Trump. They're just like, who's breaking this system for me? And to your point, Obama said something that you normally cannot say, that he was against a war. Because the two easiest things to pass in Congress are tax cuts and a war. Like, those are easy. Those always go through. And he said, no. And that's why he became president. So,
but why is everybody forgotten? No one remembers that. Like, that was the thing.
That's how he won.
Yeah, that's how he won. If he doesn't say that, then he's the same as everybody else on that stage at the Democratic debate. And it's like, people have just completely forgotten it. It's wild.
It is wild. But I think to that very point, and we talked about the Palestinians, and there's a lot of told you so on social media toward pro-Palestine folks. And I was speaking with some of them today, just asking how you doing, where your head's at. And there's a lot of defensiveness about the decision to oppose Kamala Harris. I think that, and I get that because, as you said, people's literal families are dead. And then you're seeing a lot of people on television sort of appealing to President Biden to use his remaining time to do something different, which seems highly unlikely.
He's a Zionist. He said it.
He's a Zionist. And so this brings me to page 178 in the book, because what I love about this book is that you take two narratives There's three, because there's a third narrative that's about us and our connection to Africa. But you say these are three narratives that are actually interlocked, not just in the book, but in real life. Because the way that the white world writ large has viewed us is the way that Americans writ large have been trained to view Palestinians. to view them as little more than sort of animals. And so that, whether you're a Christian, even if you're a Black Christian, you're sort of trained up to say the Israelis are always the good guy, even when they're doing bad things. They must have a reason. So let me read this piece too, because it brings up our friend D.W. Griffith again. It says, in 1958, Leon Uris published his best-selling novel, Exodus, which was later adapted into a movie starring Paul Newman. Uris hated any depiction of weak Jews and believed that many Israelis felt the same due to their strong feelings about Jews who will not fight back. And the people they were to fight back against was clear. This is Israel, wrote Uris in a 1956 letter to his father. The fighter who spits in the eye of the Arab hordes and dares him. Thus, the Jewish people could restore the honor lost to the Nazis by warring against Arabs in the breach. But better than substitute Nazis, the Palestinians gave Israel savage Nazis, third world barbarians, embodying the depraved native in the colonial mind, the Aztec, the Indian, the Zulu, the Arab. In Exodus, the image of marauding Arabs, cowardly and prone to rape, will be familiar to anyone who has seen the depiction of Black people in Griffith's Birth of a Nation. For just as the vulgar caricature of Black people served the cause of white redemption, so too did the Arabs in Exodus serve the cause of Zionism. Talk a little bit about that Venn diagram.
Yeah, I want to reply to this social media thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how big this is. Like, it's always tough for me to see, like when somebody tells me something, although I've heard this before, so that's why I'm going to address it. But I hear something that's happening on social media. Is it 5 people that are just getting a lot of engagement, or is it 50?
That could be.
I don't know. But I do know the real part, maybe, is that some of us feel like they should have been with us. Because what Donald Trump is going to do is definitely going to be worse for all of us. And I just think we should show some grace. Again, my preferred candidate here was clear, but we have to remember our positionality in this. We are not just Black people, we're Americans. And what that means is, since 1967, our tax dollars have defended an occupation and an imposition of apartheid, separate but equal. Separate but unequal, in fact. Separate roads, unequal roads. Separate justice systems, unequal justice systems. Separate water systems, unequal water systems. We have paid for this, and we've effectively defended it. And so, like, when we ask people why they were not with us in this moment, putting the present genocide aside, I just think we should remember who we have been with and who we have not been with. And again, I don't want to say that in any sort of accusatory way, you know what I mean? We know what we know, we do what we do. I'm talking about grace. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, you know what I mean, shame. I'm not talking about guilt. I'm just talking about grace, you know? And I say this having, because of this tour, been around so many people that are hurting, and not in an abstract way. Hurting like my brother, hurting like my mother, hurting like I was just at Riverside the other day, poet on the panel with me. Her mom is in Gaza City right now. Like, it's not abstract. Like, it's happening right now. And again, like, I think we have to separate what would have been a tactically correct political choice and the very real pain that people feel in their hearts, which I'm in sympathy with. And I think in terms of the book, part of this work is like to get us to not view people as human beings. Look, man, I'm old enough to remember 2020 or 2016 when Trump won the first time. And every major paper in this world had a reason to tell us why white folks, quote unquote working class white folks, supported this racist and this bigot and this sexist for reasons that were not racism, sexism, or bigotry. A lot of resources were expended.
Economic anxiety.
Economic anxiety. Against data, a lot of resources. I mean, humanizing almost to the point of like infantilizing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, so I see all of this effort, you know, expended. And then I watch these people being bombed, and it's like, you know, excuse my language, fuck y'all. You know what I mean? Like, right? Because look, I'm with humanizing you. I'm with that. I'm with that. That's my word is right. That's what we all try to do, right? But I'm with equal humanizing. You know, all people get to, have their, their humanity too. And so it's like, to be white in this country, in the journalism, in the arts, in the literature, is to experience a kind of superhumanity. All of your feelings, all of your sensitivities, all of your predilections, all of them are, you get the benefit of complete sympathy. But to be anything else is to get complete skepticism. And obviously, I feel that as a black person. I first felt that as a black person, but what eventually became clear as I was working on this book, and even before this book, was anytime you want to do something to somebody, this is what you do. You know what I mean? It's not just that you dehumanize them, you turn them into an animal. You turn them into a caricature. That movie you're talking about, that book, it was huge. It was gigantic. It was a huge movie. It was, effectively a birth of the nation, for Palestine.
Yeah.
And I think it was Ben Gurion, when this comes out, who was prime minister at the time, and one of the founding fathers of Israel, he said you couldn't have a better commercial for Israel. You're right, you couldn't. If you wanted to take somebody's land and kick out 700,000 of them and put them under military rule and erect a system that has two tiers of citizenship and different levels of rights and identifies, the best of the system for one group of people and the least of it for everybody else, get yourself a movie like that. Because it tells people who is human and who is not, who is worthy of inclusion within a society and who is not. So I think even though we've experienced that very directly, you know what I mean? There's a reason why, we sing a song, at the time, Burn Hollywood Burn. I think it's true across the board. I think arts are very often the tool of people who want to do things to other people.
Yeah, and I mean, and as somebody who's, my parents, my father was from the Congo, and my mother was from Guyana, and so they were the immigrants who came here on purpose, and they got the rude awakening. My mother got the rude awakening, like, ooh, it's racist here. that's weird. For some reason, she was.
Nobody told me. Why don't you go to school?
Yeah, she's like, they didn't tell me this is the land of opportunity, but not for me. It's weird. But I am familiar with, because we grew up in a home where South Africa was a big topic of conversation. That's where my father worked. Even though he was a black African, he could work in South Africa because he wasn't there black. But this
how did that work? Tell me, so what is that?
It was a weird thing where, because he was Congolese, he could actually work in South Africa because he worked in the mining industry, of course. He was a geologist. And he was allowed to work, and he could move more freely than South African blacks because he wasn't a Zulu. And the Kikuyu, the Zulus, the native, the indigenous South Africans are the ones who took the biggest brunt of hatred and dehumanization. And they were marching exactly, and the fact that you included them and the American, what they call the American Indian, the indigenous, remember the stories about them when we were growing up is they were scalping people, and we didn't understand they were the ones getting scalped,
actually.
Right? And so the idea that we allow children to play a game where we pretend to be the cowboy and that's the good guy, and that the savage is the indigenous person. So it's like this is repeated throughout all of these societies. When you want to, as you say in this book repeatedly, when you want to take people's land, you have to make them less than human. And this has been done in Africa. It's been done all through the Americas, and it's been done to the Palestinians. So as we now go into this moment where, whether it's real or amplified in my particular TikTok algorithm, there's a lot of angry Black creators who are saying that our solidarity with the Palestinian people is done. And that our...
Yeah, well, you never had solidarity to begin with.
Talk about that.
There was
Talk
no
about it.
solidarity. Yeah, that was no solidarity. I mean, that to me, like, I no disrespect, but I don't even know how to answer that.
Yeah.
You know,
You don't feel that there was, I mean, there to me, I mean, well, maybe I'm going by my own children because
Right.
I know that when Biden was the nominee, even in my own family, even among my kids, there was a real resistance to voting for him. And their issue was Palestine. And that you're seeing, especially young blacks, the way when we were coming up, it was apartheid, South Africa.
Yeah.
This has become a real cause célèbre, even for young Jewish
Yes.
kids,
Yes.
young black kids.
Yes.
You have a lot of these college campuses where the
Yes.
people protesting are Jewish and black,
Yes, yes.
not all just Muslims and Arabs.
Yes.
So, you know, so that energy existed
Definitely.
up until November 5th. And
Yes.
then on November 6th, at least these sort of overly online people were
Yeah.
saying, we're done.
Yeah, I question the integrity of your solidarity. If I went over, I just gotta be absolutely clear about this. If I took the same trip I took last summer to Palestine for those 10 days, and I encountered, let's say, the worst anti-black racism in the world among Palestinians, I would still say it's wrong. Apartheid is wrong. It's not wrong because me and you were friends.
Right.
It's not wrong because you got my back.
Right.
I oppose it. I oppose slavery. Like I oppose it. You know what I mean? I don't oppose it because, and listen, I mean, we have to think about like how we felt about this, right? Because like, you know, there was a certain kind of person, you know, who obviously, I mean, very upset about October 7th, I get it, who did not feel, you know, that black folks were giving the response that they wanted to see, given the fact that there have been so many, you know, Jewish freedom fighters, you know what I mean, who showed up during the civil rights movement, who literally gave their bodies, you know, during the civil rights movement. But I suspect if I talked to those freedom fighters today, they would say, I did it because it was wrong.
Right.
I didn't do it on some, you know, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I did it because it was wrong.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Like the solidarity has to be rooted in a deep moral principle. This is not a gang alliance, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is about principle. And it's like, it is nothing. Nothing in the world these people could do to me. And I'm talking about the Palestinians that would make me say what I saw over there was correct.
Yeah.
And that it is somehow that I mean, it's sickening. It's like, what you are effectively saying is you have no problem with your tax dollars going to bomb hospitals and schools because they didn't vote with you? I don't take you serious. I'm sorry, I'm getting upset about it, but I don't take you seriously.
Yeah.
Like I don't like me and you need to not have a conversation because you were never part of this.
Yeah.
You like that is, as far as I'm concerned, that is addition by subtraction. These are not people you want with you because they are not principled. They don't have real principles. They're in it like to feel something or whatever. You know what I mean? But if you don't have a secure principle that is, listen, and then I'm gonna stop. But it's like my life begins with my parents trying to find their way out under Jim Crow. I am opposed to that system. That's it. That's it. And if I ever find myself in a situation where I am somehow saying I'm defending that system,
Yeah.
or like I'm just gonna look the other way while bombs are dropped and kids are killed and what good am I? Why am I here? Like I gotta face my son, man. I gotta face my wife. I gotta face my parents. Like what are we doing here? So I just, you know, it kind of enrages me because people like putting a camera in front of their face. Like if they're gonna do it, they should say the truth. They should say, I no longer have a problem with my tax dollars going to support genocide. Say it. Say it. I'm for genocide now. Say it. Say the truth. Say the truth because that is what you're saying. And so I just feel like, you know, people who, and I'm sorry for ranting about this, but I feel like people who claim to be part of a movement, who encounter something like this and decide that, like, they were never part of it. They were never there to begin with. So, good riddance.
Yeah. You know, you can clap for that.
I know that.
No, the solidarity is either real or it's not. And I know it's with the part with, you know.
I also just wonder, like, have you, like, when people do that, like, have you talked to actual, not you, I know
Yeah.
you have, but, like, have you had a conversation with actual Palestinians when you do that? Like, have you had like people whose families are actually dead? You want to tell them that to their face?
Yeah.
And is that how you talk to people?
And I think that is a really important point that actually, to me, is a really big part of this book. As a journalist, this is a media criticism.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the giant media criticism.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a damning media criticism because you and I both know that in this industry, the voices that are not there are Palestinians because they have been so thoroughly sort of submerged in myth and in negative mythology. They just sort of exist as this amorphous terrorist thing that we don't think about, we don't talk about. We used to when I was younger because they would sort of imply that they were going to blow up your plane. You know, and nobody knew why. Nobody knew. There's something they're angry about, but we don't know what it is. They're angry and we're not sure why. Just like like indigenous Americans. They're just angry Indians, and we have no idea what their beef could be with the lovely colonists who were just here just trying to get some corn. They just wanted some corn. Just wanted to move next door. How dare you oppose them moving in? All you had was a teepee. You didn't even have a country. What are you talking about? We gave you schools.
Right. All right, so I'm doing you a favor.
So I mean, because our media has been built on that narrative, it's very difficult to try to get off that narrative at work. It's to get off that narrative in this industry. Yeah. Which brings me to, and people will be mad at me if I don't bring it up, the interview.
Oh, what was it? Oh, you talking CBS?
Yes. And the thing that was so jarring about, and I don't know if you all saw it. You did, okay. In that moment, as you were saying, you've become a meme, right? So you're not on social media. So Ta-Nehisi is not on social media. Oh yeah, your face in it is a meme, officially a meme. So you made it. You made it. You were a meme. Because your face was like, as it was happening, and so you were taking some criticism, but it was sort of shocking to me to hear the sort of range, the kind of criticism it was, that essentially sort of likened what you wrote to sort of a terrorist, that would sort of be supportive of terrorism, which clearly it's not. It's a narrative, it's a book, it's an honest portrayal of what you saw as a journalist and as a writer. How were you processing that in that moment live on TV?
I mean, that's interesting, because for weeks I didn't watch it, right?
Yeah.
And then, although I heard all the noise, and then I went back and watched it, and I mean, there were a couple things going on. I was, before any of the questions got asked, well, I guess let me back up. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like, I knew what this was. And I did not expect, people to cheer for it. So it's not like I walked in there and expected, like the warmness. I expected a challenging interview. I was nervous and a little scared, as I often am, to be honest with you. I have two things going on in my heart all the time. It is an insistence that certain things must be done and must be said, and a deep, deep fear of saying them. And those things are always competing, in me. Yeah. One wins out, almost always, but it doesn't mean that I'm not afraid. I'm always afraid. I'm always afraid. But I have to face people, and so that usually conquers my fear. So I was nervous, and then when it got going, I felt less and less nervous, because one of the things that became clear, all of those sort of cliches that are being brought out, does Israel have a right to exist? What about the Palestinians, suicide bombs? When you've met people that live under the weight of that, it is enraging. Because it's not an abstract argument anymore. It's like you actually know people that are suffering under that. So probably for the first 2 minutes, I was nervous, and then I started to get really mad. And the anger kind of cleared my head. I am thankful for that interview. You know what I mean? I'm really thankful for that interview because it's I woke up that morning and I played Tupac's Hail Mary on the way there.
Come with me.
That's what I was singing that Hail Mary, the whole way I was playing. I played it that morning because I knew what it was. It's like this is a fight. Like you can't expect to go in and say things to people and think that they're not gonna do X, Y, and Z. You know? And so even after I got done, I wasn't really mad at him. My publicist was steamed. And he was pissed. And then I got back and everybody else was, like a lot of other people were pissed, right? I think y'all should be less pissed. Let me tell you why I think y'all should. I mean, there are things you should be pissed about, but I think you're pissed about the wrong things. I love, and I've heard from several people that they were really insulted about the part about take away the awards and all of that. You gotta understand who I am. Like, that don't mean shit to me. Like, that's not who I am. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take the awards. They're very nice. But that's not why we do this. That's not what, you write a book like that, like thinking that, And so, like, you can take the awards, you can take the cup, you can do whatever. But at the end of the day, you still had to deal with me. And what I have is I have my facts. I have my reporting. I have my reading. I have my research. So the awards are like irrelevant. You know what I mean? I am here to do everything I can to pull a group of people who have been pushed out of the frame back in. And really to help them pull themselves back in. That's why a more articulate way. Like that's what I'm here to do. You know what I mean? And if I have to, deal with a few hostile interviews, it's okay. It's fine. I mean, the expectation that I would go in there and they would applaud for me is probably not a good one. I feel most bad about that, and I've said this before, for Gail and Nate. I felt bad for them. Gail, as I'm sure as you know, is one of the most prepared people in the world. She could have done that interview, and it would not, I don't know, people think like it would have been some sort of softball. It wouldn't have been. You know what I mean? She would have been challenging too. I felt bad he did not make room for his fellow co-hosts. I felt like it probably looked bad that he did not make room for his fellow African-American co-hosts. But I don't, like we're here to fight. I oppose what they're doing. I oppose them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I oppose the fact that they don't have Palestinians in prominent positions. I'm against that. Like, we're not friends on that. I mean, we're good. You know what I mean? Not like if I saw him, I'd be mad at him. But we have a legit, serious disagreement. And I think the fact that they do not do that is a part of, and y'all are going to get tired of me saying this, why bombs can be dropped on children. I think those two things are related. So I'm very serious about that. And so, like, the idea that they would, so that we would smile and yuck it up. No. I mean, what happened was what was supposed to happen. It happened the way, it should happen. And I'm okay with that.
And I mean, we are in a media landscape where this topic is very fraught. It gets people very emotional. And there's almost, there's a fear that a lot of people feel, whether they are in that community or not, of even doing some of these stories in a robust way, because it doesn't feel like it's a welcome topic, because there's obviously so much sensitivity. The Holocaust was it still lives and sits in the hearts of Jewish people in a way that creates so much pain that it's just difficult to even approach anything about Israel. And so the complexities of, the parts of the pro-Palestinian movement that are very Jewish. Jewish Voices for Peace, they're all Jewish. They're out there protesting, and Jewish Americans are very liberal. And so that even gets sort of lost in the nuance. And we just don't cover it in a complex way. Do you think that because Black Americans sit in this space that is so unique in the world, the middle part of your book that gets lost, I think, when a lot of people talk about the book, the part about going to Africa, for me, as a person who's daughter of an African, really stood out to me. Because it rang true to me about the way Africans view American Blacks, with a kind of reverence to say, you are the Black people who created the culture that reverberates all over the world and even back to Africa, right? Black American musical culture, style culture, cool culture, literally is a dominant force on earth. And to have come from being bred like cattle, which is the Caribbean slaves were just work till they died. And that's why Caribbean slaves tend to be darker. They don't, they're not as admixed because it was just work, die, get more, right? And then the slaves in South America were so blended in with indigenous people and Spaniards that they're just so blended that they lost the fact that they black at all. They would be one drop rule black here, but there they're like, hey, no.
Right.
They don't want to even touch that. But in Africa, there's sort of the thing where the family says to you, they talk about you that all blacks are light skinned, depending on even if call you mixed, which is wild to me.
Wild to me.
I know.
But factually correct. Factually correct.
How to talk about where that piece, where the middle piece of the book, where it's not African Americans, it's not Israel and Palestinians, it's Africa. Where does that fit in the narrative?
I wish like more people, I get the sense that most people just read the.
They just skipped to the Palestine, right? Yeah.
The people interviewing me, a lot of them just skipped to the back half and didn't read that, because what that is about is like, how do you imagine yourself once you have had an experience where somebody has exploited you over the course of centuries and then created a kind of curriculum of lies to justify that exploitation. You live under the weight of that. So how do you get out of that? How do you get out of that? And one of the ways that we have gotten out of it is we have constructed a kind of mythical Africa in our minds. And then you go to Africa and you find not mythical Africans, human beings, like real ones. And it's like, so where does that live? I mean, the thing I tell people all the time is like, I have an African name that no African has. None.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist on the continent at all. It exists here. It was invented here.
You should have heard my father go on about Kwanzaa. He was so mad about it. He was like, I don't know what y'all have made. You made up on holiday and it's uncelebrated in Africa. What are you doing? He was so angry about it. He was mad about it.
Yeah, I know.
He didn't like it.
I know. I get it. But you know what? It's actually brilliant.
Yeah.
It's actually brilliant because once what happens is, see, white people had in this, and what they do is because they have money and power, they make it look like it's science. It's not. It's myth too.
Yes, all of it.
Like they made it up too. You know what I mean? We just had the misfortune of having to make it up in the 20th century. But it's legit. It's legit. It's legit as long as you understand it's myth, and as long as beneath that is some sort of liberating impulse. And it's not an impulse to go and take things from other people. Because all myths are not equal. One of the things that, about that chapter is I always felt like it was incomplete, even when I was done. Because one of the things I was trying to figure out was, okay, we are separated, obviously, by centuries. African Americans, through the great crime, the genocide of the Middle Passage, and frankly, the industrial level of sexual assault that you just can't imagine slavery without.
Right.
Like it's core to what slavery was. Sexualized courtship. So we were created here, right, out of something, right, and out of the most tragic, awful stuff. And so then you go back to this place that you have roots in. So how do you relate to it? And I was maybe pleasantly surprised and maybe somewhat disturbed that the relation feels natural, right? Like it really does feel natural. And I don't mean it feels natural like we are exactly the same. But, when I leave Baltimore and go to, LA and meet black folks, we are not exactly the same. Or when I go to Jamaica, we are not exactly the same either. There's no group of people can withstand that. Irish Americans are not exactly the same as Irish folks, and there's no middle passage for them to deal with in that. But I do feel something, and I had the great opportunity of being on this podcast with Trevor Noah, and at that point it was I'm African American, I'm Black American. I got a South African cat, and it was a sister on there who I believe grew up in London but had roots in Nigeria, right? And I was telling her and I had a conversation there like I didn't have anywhere else, right? So I said, okay, so what is this? And what she said to me that I keep thinking about, she said it's a loss. She said we all know what it means to have like this gigantic loss. There's a loss in colonialism. There's a loss in apartheid. And she said loss is a very kinetic force. That people form bonds off of loss all the time. That people pull things out of loss all the time. You know, and that really, really helped me. You know, it really helped me understand what I felt and why. Because when I came back, I had these emotions, and in many ways I couldn't put words to it. You know, but it was there, man. It was like being with cousins. I mean, and like even like people get mad, like black folks sometimes get mad. You call them mixed. The very fact that she could say that to me was statement of a family tie. You understand? Like, that's something, like, that's an insulting thing you say to somebody you already feel tied to. You say to anybody else is rude.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
You
Like,
say it to your family.
Right. They had to have a level of familiarity to, like, make that, sort of comment. And so, it was beautiful. I need to go back because I think when I went there, I was, I had, the middle passage was just weighing so heavy on me. And the loss of that. But I think that chapter is very, very important because the great tragedy of Zionism is here was another myth that was invented. Here was another ideology that was invented that, was really a response to, again, some of the worst oppression, genocide, pogroms, whatever you want to, claim, they did it. And it could not imagine itself outside of the ideology of the people that oppressed them. In many ways, it took it on, in fact. It took on some of its worst, aspects. And that is so tragic. You know what I mean? Because, like, I understand the impulse towards it. I did. I mean, it wasn't like I was there and was like, what are you guys complaining about? You know what I mean? Like, you go to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem and you get it. It was bad. It was really, really bad. And how do you endure something like that and create an ideology of liberation that completely rejects the people who oppressed you? That's difficult. It's a challenge, but I think it is the challenge.
And I think it's the reason that I feel highly recommend do not skip to the third part of the book, as I think some people, you have to read it all because the middle part is the connecting part because it was colonialism. And it was the rapacious greed for humans and gold that took Europeans to Africa. And those who they didn't steal, they colonized.
That's right.
And colonialism is sort of it is the Venn diagram. It was all of the book. And so kind of to me, the middle part radiates to the other two pieces. Because the reason Africans feel so connected to us, when we were just in Ghana, my husband and I, everyone greets you as sister and brother. They treat you because to them you are lost family. People went go into the town or into the little village and never came back. They never found out what happened to them. They never saw them again. Just imagine every other neighbor just disappearing from your neighborhood. And you just never see them again. You have no idea where they went. And remember, they weren't aware of slavery in America and breeding and slavery. They didn't even know, and a lot of the time the enslaved people came from different tribes. They couldn't even talk to each other. And so they're bewildered, but your people left behind are just as bewildered. And that's the thing I think we forget, that Africans feel a sense of bewilderment. And I think Palestinians, those who I've talked to, and those who I've interviewed, they have the same longing that you're talking about for home. And to be told you don't exist. The guy who's going to be our ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, says they don't exist. That there are no Palestinians. They don't exist. And so can you imagine being somebody who's told, you just aren't even a person. You aren't real. You're a myth. You are lying when you say that you're from there. You're lying when you say that you... And so I can't imagine how that feels. But I think that you did such a good job in at least making them people. So my question to you then is, do you feel that as we're going forward, it's going to get bad? Like it appears that what the new administration is going to do is going to put everything the Biden-Harris administration did to shame. We're talking potential full annexation of the West Bank. Potentially, God knows what happens to those people in Gaza. We're already seeing famine. Do you think that the media has learned anything about the way we tell this story that will change the way this coming, whatever we want to call it, is covered?
No, I don't. I don't. And if it did, the results, like, this is the kind of thing where you invest now and then it shows up 10 years later. So I think it's kind of too late for that part, for any sort of immediate. It doesn't mean folks shouldn't do anything, but I think for the immediate, no. You see, the other complicated part about this is we are lying to ourselves in terms of America's relationship to the Jewish people of the world. We're lying. If any of you guys get a chance, I highly recommend Kim Burns' documentary, The U.S. and the Holocaust.
It's so good.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And damning.
And depressing.
And depressing.
Yes.
But it is an exceptional work.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Kim Burns makes clear is that this is a country that never wanted Jewish people here.
They sure did.
And it's, and it goes back to, you know what I mean? He starts with the Chinese Exclusion Acts and then goes through eugenics.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, didn't want to go to war, by the way. Didn't want to go to war and say, no, this is all we went and say, no, you didn't. You wanted no part of that.
No.
And it's debatable had we never been attacked, whether we would have.
Correct.
It's you can easily imagine a world where the United States does nothing about the Holocaust.
Or if the people who attacked us weren't visibly foreign.
There it is too. And then there's that. But here's the most damning part. After the war, the United States does not say, you know what, you guys have suffered genocide, worst possible fate, 70% of European Jewry wiped out. We are, the land of immigrants. We will provide a haven for you. No, we pass laws to keep these people out. We put them in displaced persons camps. We put, I think it's MacArthur, over top of them, who writes that, the Jew is not even human, is less than an animal. That's what we put over top of it. The survivors are, this was United States action. I want to be very clear about this. We did that. So this notion that, we are somehow, this great friend, of Jewish folks. I mean, that's not what the record shows. What the record shows is there are many, many anti-Semites who are very comfortable with Jewish people being over there, inflicting themselves against other people, and not over here. And that's dark. That's really, really hard to sit with. I mean, I just, this is like Biden. He said this. He says, look, we all know, he's talking to a Jewish audience, you would not be safe anywhere if not for Israel. What? You're the president of the United States. Right. Are you saying you're not going to protect citizens of this country? Are you saying this state is not capable? And that comes off as some sort of people, I don't know, they hear it as support. It's not.
Right, it's a complimentary thing.
It's not at all. It's not at all. It actually sounds a lot like what Lincoln said, by the way.
Yeah.
That's what it has. I go, what are you talking about? These people are citizens. And so
especially coming from a Christian, because there's a narrative to that as well.
I mean, and so I just think part of this is we lie, we mask our support for Israel as a kind of, anti-Semitism, and it's not. It's not. It is a support of colonialism. It is a kind of way of offloading deep and ancient prejudices in the West, deep and ancient racisms that go back to the origin of the West itself, and not dealing with them. You know what I mean? You got a situation in Germany where they are banning Jewish scholars because of what they said about Gaza. What? What is this? And so I just think, man, hopefully, some of us, not just in media, but, who call themselves, part of, some sort of progressive movement in this country will recover our ideals. You know what I mean? And move away, from the, the kind of myth we've been talking about.
And I guess the question then becomes, what will it take? Because there is no motive, there is no incentive structure built in our industry to do that, right? I mean, if there is, I don't know what it is.
Shame. Yeah. I think shame actually does work in media. I will tell you why. I will tell you why. It has to be shame from certain people. And that's what I've been trying to do. You know, like you invite me on and you think I'm nice. I am nice, Ta-Nehisi. I'm a very nice guy. And I'm polite and I smile and I talk. But I look forward to telling you, not you, Joy, but you on your ears that you should be ashamed of yourself. You know, and I think more of us who are invited in should make it hot for these people. You know what I mean? It should be very hot.
And do you believe, and I feel like this does sort of bring it all together, there's a unique power to the African American voice doing that.
Yes, which is, and I think that is, yes, I do. So first of all, I mean, Black people, for all of our oppression, for the fact that we live, you know, at the bottom of every socioeconomic indicator in this country, despite the fact we are the most incarcerated, you know, we are the victims of most of the violence, the segregation, et cetera, run down the line. We have, because of our struggle, deep moral valence with people. And it is a kind of power. It's not absolute power. It's not cash. It's not being a billionaire, but it is power. It is a kind of power. It is the reason why, again, why is APAC, for instance, reaching out to HBCUs to take people on trips to Israel? Why are they doing that? You know, if we are so powerless, like, why would they, what do you need us for? You know, why did it come down so hard on certain Black people, you know, when they did not give the response that folks wanted to hear after October 7th? Why? You know, and I don't mean, you know, this is horrific, this massacre is awful, there is no excuse for it, there's no excuse for taking human life. I think any decent person, you know what I mean, certainly in our politics could say that. But why do you need more than that? And part of why you need more than that, and I will say, you know, supporters of Israel are not unique in this. People try to do this, you know, all the time in American politics. It's because the moral valence of the Black struggle is very high. What I mean is, if it looks like Black folks and Black movements are on your side, then it looks like justice. You know?
It's one of the reasons that you're seeing this sort of furious, almost desperate attempts to say that the Trump victory was really not about white voters. It was about Black and brown voters.
That's exactly
trying to recruit Black and brown people in as the real reason. The real reason this happened, and not a.
It's the cleansing. It cleanses it. You know? And they're still saying that too, even though like the numbers don't.
Oh, I read one today.
They still say it.
And every time someone says it, and feel free to steal this, none of this is copywritten. If you take an electorate that was 67% white in 2020 and make it 71% white, and you take white women's votes that are about 30% of the whole population, or 37%, and non-college white voters outvote college voters by the numbers that they did, any Republican is going to win.
Yeah, you will lose that.
And you know, there's just no other explanation that actually has mathematical valence. Because the math is the math. No other group voted a majority for Donald Trump except white voters and Latino men whose votes were canceled out directly by Latinas. They have 6% and 6%. So if 6% goes this way and 6% goes that way, they didn't sway the election. So you can't make the math work, but there is sort of a realism. I mean, there were think pieces out today still saying, no, this was not about white voters.
The answer is depressing and obvious. It's white people. It's like,
they're the most numbers.
I mean, and they got the most numbers. It's not even like, you know, hey, white people, something, you know what I mean? Like, you know, wrong with you in your, it just is what it is.
It is what it is.
This is what it is. I mean, this is how it was. I mean, you got mad. I wrote this in 2016. I was like, listen, this is the only group of people where you go to any different demographic, women, men, working class, poor, rich. This was true then. I don't know. I haven't run the numbers today. But there was no uneducated, educated, I believe whatever. If it was white people, it got a majority. It got a majority. You know what I mean? Like, and that is just what it is. And that is not, again, I be absolutely clear about this. That's not, you know, necessarily to shame white people. That is to say,
it's just factual.
Yes, and there is a very real material interest in being white. There is. It just is one.
Yeah.
You know, but that is, again, that's one of those things. It's very hard to accept that. It's really, really hard. It makes people feel not great, which is like, hey, we don't feel great either.
I'm gonna check my time. I see people sort of circling around. How many minutes do I have? 1 minute. Okay, I get one more question. This is good. I have to get one more question. I actually genuinely don't usually like asking this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway.
Okay.
It's usually my least favorite
You got
question,
me here.
but I'm gonna still ask it anyway. Why'd you write this book?
Oh, that's easy. It was because of my students at Howard. I teach writing at Howard, and I've taught writing since 2012 at a lot of places. I taught at MIT, I taught at NYU, I taught at CUNY. When I was much, much younger, I taught in Loyal Correctional Facility in DC. I taught in a lot of places, and certainly in terms of the higher education level. I walked into class with these kids, and on the first day I told them that I loved them, which I had never done. Why would I say that to them? And a lot of that book is about why I would say that to them, because the tradition of Black writing is a very specific thing in this country. And it is deeply tied to traditions of democracy, traditions of justice, and traditions of human rights. And first and foremost, I wanted that generation of Black writers coming up after me to have some sense of their great power in the world. And then after that, but also important, I wanted young writers, period, to have some sense of their great power in the world. We are living in a time where people run around and tell people just STEM or teach girls to code. Girls should learn to code. I'm not against that. But they should learn poetry too. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually good. It's actually good. Boys should read more poetry. That's actually the problem. And so I wanted to tell them, listen, if you can communicate with people clearly, directly, and hauntingly, you can do a lot in this world.
That's right.
You can do a lot in this world. So
it's the most important skill in the world. So I've never said this to you. You said I'm on my Baldwin shirt. Y'all see, I wore this for Baldwin and Company books because I do love Baldwin and Company. But I don't compare other people to other people because I think it is actually wrong to say so and so is so and so at their time. And as a writer myself, it is challenging to try to make comparisons. But if there was an equivalent to James Baldwin in our time, it would be you. One love, my brother. Excellent book. Y'all need to read this book. It's called The Message. It's brilliant. And read it all, y'all. Don't skip to the third part. Read all of it. Much love. Thank you, Xavier University. Thank you, President. Thank you, Baldwin. Love y'all.
Thank you all, please. One more time for Joy Reid and Ta-Nehisi Coates. Once again, I'm DJ Johnson. I want to say thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful night.